that has some questions from Krista. It's a friend of hers. So we're going to spend some time with that. I want to kind of start before we dive into that, because I think this chart, her chart, is a great example of this particular point that I want to make, which concerns identification with the descriptions and keynotes in your design, right? And so the thing to, let me take a step back. So, whoop, there's a little Sirach confusion there. There you go. Got people tuning in locally here. So I recently went through a breakup and a lot of different life transitions. So as you can see here, I'm a travel person, right? And so if I was advising this design, right, on relationship compatibility, I would definitely say, because circuitry is really important, that this design needs to be with someone that can be as supportive as they are, right? Mutuality, reciprocity, these things are important. Fairness, right? Having said that, you know, we make a wrong turn, right, and get ourselves into trouble when we take that as carte blanche to get lost in the stories that the chemistry produces, right? So there I am going through a breakup, right? And there's lots of thoughts. And, you know, I've told this story to a lot of friends and colleagues. You know, the story itself sounds unjust and unfair, right? And so I had to process through a lot of such stories. And what became very clear was that identification with those stories, which are produced by my design, right, which are there in my chart, right, actually hindered the healing grieving process, right? It obstructed the healing and grieving process, right? So while it's going to be satisfying for me to find a partner that is supportive, right, and has this kind of reciprocity, right, that drives them, that doesn't mean that we should be leaning into those kind of mental stories that arise from our chemistry, right? It's about witnessing them, right? And it was a really clear example of how the mind is its own echo chamber, right? As long as I was in that echo chamber, right, of stories around fairness and injustice, I felt worse in my body. There was energy that was stuck, right? And that was being backed up by my defined ego, wanting to hold on to those stories, to protect the false self, right? And so when I let go of those and kind of softened into the experience, there was a shift, right? There was a transmutation of the energy. I could really tap further into the truth of what I was really feeling. I could really be with those difficult experiences that need to be met so that they clear, so that they move on, right? So I say all this to invite you to contemplate in your own chart where you've taken something that you've learned about design and misunderstood it to mean that, let me say it differently, it sort of becomes an excuse for dysfunction, right? An excuse, it's a coping mechanism that you've now identified with, right, in your design. And you're using that in a defensive way, right? In an unhealthy, unnecessary defensive way, right? When there's really a deeper you below that, if you can let go of some of these stories. I'll give you another example in my chart. My personality sun is in gate 52, line 5, right? Which is called explanation. Obviously, I'm here explaining stuff. I'm a good explainer, right? Now, where this can go wrong is I can get caught up in trying to explain things so that other people, hold on, let me just show you, grab my tool here. I can get caught up in trying to explain things, right, in order to feel safe. If only other people understand, right, understanding circuit, then I can be safe, right? So you see how the true self and the not self are just 2 inches apart, right? There's a truth that I am here to be a heretical explainer, a logical heretical explainer that can really help other people understand stuff and secure their future. That's all true. But what's the energy behind that? Where am I coming from? Right? What stories am I identified with, when I'm triggered, when I'm feeling afraid? So I want to take a pause. I want to look at this chart that Krista shared with me, because I think it's a really great example of what I'm talking about here. But before I move forward, does anyone have any questions or comments about what I'm saying? Jonas says the mind can tie into fears and the fears of the spleen. Yes. Yep. Yep. 100%. Okay. Let's take a look at this chart. Again, this is someone that Krista knows personally. And let's just all take it in for a moment. If it's helpful for you, you can see she's across of penetration, right? 52 and 6 are the bridging gates. A lot of sixth line activations, a lot of second line activations. So let's go through looking at Allison's incarnation cross of penetration. Okay. So the whole story of this chart has so much to do with relationships, right? And a lot of potential for unfounded expectations about what a relationship is going to deliver for her, right? And inability to remain in what could be a very good, healthy relationship for her, right? And even seeking relationships and sexuality as a means to self-worth. So if we look here at the personality sun, the gate and line is called assuredness, okay? And one thing about, this particular, first off, this is the abstract, it's one of the abstract format gates, right? And, abstract is all about, this desire and longing to have rich life experiences, which will inevitably bring you to crisis. Crisis specifically meaning I haven't encountered this before. How do I deal with this? Right? But if you persevere, you make progress, you grow, right? There's maturation, right, in the abstract process. But the whole key to the abstract process is to be fully in the experience for its own sake. It's very existential in that way, which is kind of ironic, right? Because there's no spleen in the abstract process. But it is this, and so there is this challenge of how do I be present in my experience without goals and agendas, or expectations getting in the way, right? And can I be in that experience fully, right, without being deterred by crisis, right, without needing to end the experience because of temporary, transitory experiences of boredom, right? This person really needs to learn how to deal with all of the different facets of life experiences, This is a channel of transitoriness. Emotions are transitory. They may be extremely uncomfortable, but they'll pass. And they don't pass by thinking about them. In fact, that really keeps them entrenched, right? It creates a gridlock. They pass through just experiencing them in the body, right? That's the 9-centered way. The 7-centered way is mental aspirations. How do I become a better person? What do I need to do? What do I need to do to get there? right? The nine-centered way is waking down, not waking up. It's going within. It's fully being with your experience. In other words, being is becoming. Change happens when we fully meet our experience as it is. That's one thing this person needs to learn. This is someone who's very antsy, who's really, struggles, to see and experience through to the end. But she won't really be satisfied unless she can see and experience through to the end. I mean, she's a natural starter, right? But when she's emotionally clear and has a sacral response, she can complete these cycles, right? And really discover things, discover things only to the extent that she can endure the difficult emotions and experiences on her journey, right? Then she'll succeed where others fail, right? And so much could be about succeeding in relationship. I meant to circle the 54 here. And this is very much a marriage-oriented person. This is the marrying maiden. This whole stream is about marriage, right? So this is someone who can have intimate encounters that are impersonal, but ultimately sexuality and emotionality are entangled, right? They are entangled. And she needs to be friends first, right? And of course, I think she has the 59-1. There's a pursuer-pursued dynamic, but friends first. So one of the dilemmas here for this person in a relationship context is that because she's such a starter, right? Because her chemistry says you got to start something, her mind is saying you got to start something, you got to start something, right? She could be in the right relationship, right? That she could complete, that she needs to be with for a cycle or several cycles. But her mind's always saying, got to start something new. Well, why am I thinking that? Well, I wouldn't be thinking that if it was the right relationship, right? There must be something wrong with this relationship. Otherwise, I wouldn't be trying to start something new, right? But her mind's always going to be thinking, I got to start something new, whether it's right, wrong, or whatever. So this is the trap, right? This gets to the same point that I'm making about my own chemistry and the trap of the tribal story around justice and fairness. Now, what I learned from Krista is that this person has had, correct me if I'm misspeaking here, Krista, about 30 relationships in 5 years.
5 years. But serious ones. But
Yeah.
But
a lot of different, well, that's the whole point, is a lot of attempts. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe 30 different attempts over 5 years, which is quite a lot, right?
Yeah.
And as Jonah's pointing out, obviously the 29, the first thing it wants to say is yes. And let's see what, and she's doing that blindly, right? Second line, she's just putting out that she can commit. People are calling her into commitments, right? Calling her into sexual commitments. And she can blindly sign up for that. And then she's in the context of it and she's thinking, God, yeah, I need something new. It's not really living up to my expectations. I'm bored. I'm antsy. This isn't what I thought it was going to be. Right? I'm looking for something intense, some marriage material here. Right? And on it goes. And on it goes. And of course, relationship and sexuality will be a means to prove her self-worth. If I find someone who loves me, and maybe I am lovable, maybe I am worthy, right? And then again, in this experience, I didn't get that. You know, the sex was okay, but at the end of the day, I don't feel better about myself. And I know that I just want to start something new. And has she noticed over time that she's always looking to start something new? I would say quite possibly not. The mental story that's going on there. This is not a design that tracks patterns. There's no logical circuitry here. You know, I've got channel of logic, for example, and 3 of my 4 incarnation cascades are logical. So I'm always tracking patterns, and I'm always dumbfounded at how, you know, people in society, you know, in general, just keep playing out the same patterns. You know, haven't we all learned that yet? We've been there, we've done that. You know, this isn't a design that is so good with that. Right? So it can be continually falling into the same trap again and again and again. And worst of all, you know, now this person hasn't been married, but is certainly thinking about marriage. And there's a susceptibility about getting into the wrong marriage, right? Of course, when she doesn't fall, when she's not clear, right? And doesn't respond, and then commits to something that, again, you know, thinks is going to improve her life and secure her future and make her feel safe and meet her needs and all these things, right? You know, and she has a lot of hopes, right? About, you know, how the right partner could meet her needs and protect her, right? And, you know, if he's not doing things quite right, maybe I can fix him. I can change that. So many possibilities for how we could make this work.
Thanks, Dan.
So I want to take a pause there. We can talk about other aspects of this chart, but that's one of the big themes here. And you can see how, you know, we're not trying to give permission to the psychology that arises from the chemistry, right? All of this operates correctly, right, when following strategy and authority, right? Then all of this is emergent. It emerges in a flow. You know, she can give people hope, right? She knows what will change without her meddling and intervening, right? So the mind goes along for that ride rather than leading. So questions, thoughts, comments? Krista, of course, this is your friend, so if you have anything to comment, please feel free.
I just think you're really spot on for a lot of these things.
Can you talk into the, are you on the, oh.
No, I'm not on it.
Yeah, why don't you just come a little closer?
I think you're really spot on to a lot of these things, especially when you hit home with potentially the relationship that just ended for her. I could potentially be the perfect one. And, you know, I'm hoping that she's waiting this emotional wave to hopefully get clarity for this one.
Mm-hmm.
I do appreciate you looking at her chart, because I will be showing this to her, because these are aspects that I have not seen myself. You know, that's not something that I could have told her. So I really do actually appreciate you doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure she will too.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, just catching up on the chat. Sirach said, would you say that hope only meddles when it feels that something won't change? No. I think that, you know, there's instability with the motivation and transference on the personality side, right? There's always a dynamic there. Maybe I don't know that I would, you know, be able to say that's the only time that it occurs. regardless, whenever it meddles, it's not playing to its intelligence, right? So it feels meddlesome to the other person. It feels unwelcome to the other person, and it doesn't actually fix the situation. It just keeps her hanging on to something that is broken. Could you let me? I can move her. Okay. Jonah, I wonder about 35, 36 and its natural sexuality that enters and leaves rather than exits and stays. I'm not sure that's really correct. I mean, I think you have to kind of take into account the whole holistic picture. One of the things I really learned from Alok, who has this channel, is that, you know, again, this transitoriness, the real maturity is being able to see that emotions are transitory. You know, they're not going to stick around forever. They're not going to kill you. You can get through them, right? And the maturity there, maturity always being an abstract keyword, is being able to, yes, sometimes you can, you know, let that go and move on to the next thing. But so much of what really drives the letting go and going on to the next thing, according to him and according to what I've seen with the child that had this, is I can't do it. I'm in a crisis. This is overwhelming. This is too much emotion for me to be with. I quit. You know, these are the great quitters, you know? And this person's sexuality is not only impersonal, you know, and they could have some one night stand experiences, but ultimately this is a person that wants more than that. You know, they're definitely shooting for more than that. As Krista said, the most recent relationship, she really felt like that was the one. And it's been very devastating that it didn't turn out to be the one. So. Yeah. Next, she said, same. My manifestor 36, 35 friend married for 35 years from her high school, still happy. The thing to see in all this is that there are mechanisms in human design that need to be unpacked, right? Like, what is and you have to understand that, again, everything is actually couched in not self language. What makes the 35, 36 keep letting go and trying new things? You have to see the underlying mechanism of that. You know, and from what I've seen, and I really think Alok is spot on in this, is that so much is, I don't know how to persevere through the crisis. I'm feeling emotionally overwhelmed. I'm going to quit, you know? Yeah, relationships are transitory, but not necessarily as transitory as this person would make them, right? So 30 attempts in a few years or whatever is quite a lot, you know? Ultimately, they're transitory, even if they last a lifetime. Someone have something to say? I heard some angst. Yep. Okay, if there's no other comments about that, you know, we can talk about a couple other things about this chart, which may be interesting as well. I mean, this is the most mystical gate and line in the whole, you know, in human design. And it's about both spiritual and material transformation. This particular line is really, it's not about this person. So it's enlightenment and darkness, let me say that. And so it's not about this person seeking enlightenment for themselves, right? This person, it's like their act of service is actually what, it's how she grows spiritually, right? It's very much this awareness of we're all in this together, right? Both of these channels have that quality of like, hey, we're all interconnected, you know? And over here, it's like, let's do materially well together. And that's true here as well. You know, they're both material and spiritual. We're all interconnected, right? We got to take care of each other. So it's not about her achieving enlightenment, right? The more she helps others wake up, the more she wakes up. 57.6, which I also have, this is an interesting one. This is one in which she is learning that, you know, I've got this really great intuition, which actually has 57.6 twice, and she has 57.5. I have the same configuration in Pluto. She's born like a week or two after me. And so incredibly strong intuition. And this is a cross of penetration. I mean, the most intuitive cross, right? But the trouble is in the 6th line here, right? And this has more weight to it than this does, right? Because it's in the incarnation cross, right? But this is someone who can be apathetic, 6th line keynote, about intuition. And it's something I've seen in my own life, in that I can see something coming, right? But that doesn't necessarily help me. You know, I might know, like, you know, I remember in the past, before I was doing human design full time, being in a work setting and being like, you know, this is over, you know, but an exit sign didn't really show up and I didn't really have a response to anything else. And so you're kind of like, okay, I can see the curtains closing, but what? You know, so this person has an awareness of the limitation of intuition, you know, what it's really going to do for her or not. And Ra said that the 57 line 6 will often even deny their intuition. They'll just call it their thinking. You know, they won't make that distinction.
Oh.
And, you know, the thing is that this is an intuition that wants to perfect the form, right? You know, an intuition that will never fail. You know, and that's just not life. Even if you follow strategy and authority and operate correctly, things go quote unquote wrong. You meet challenges, you know, that's what we're here for. So there's some apathy here around trusting it, you know, and even a disassociation, another 6 line keynote, from even being able to kind of tune into it, right? With the 51 line 6, separation, right? That's a important 6 line keynote, right? They need to spend time by themselves, right? And they're separated, not just interpersonally, but they're separated from the rest of the hexagram, right? They're not necessarily invested in the nature of the hexagram, right? They're beyond it. They're looking at the next hexagram in the wheel. So this person is here to learn about courage and having the guts and, you know, being able to lay the small self down for the higher self and all these sorts of things. But again, there is going to be this 6 line high standard discernment of, oh, is it really worth, you know, putting my courage into this? Is it worth being competitive over that? You know, is it worth it? You know? And it's looking at 42 line 1, which is called diversification, which is to say that there are as many different ways to live life as there are humans, right? And that kind of confuses her further about, well, where do I really put my courage? You know, what's the right path for that? You know, there's so many paths, so many possibilities, right? And by this, I'm looking at the distraction, of course. Another interesting thing about this chart is, you know, speaking of relationships, that's what this person's really learning about, right? This gate, although you wouldn't necessarily think it at, you know, first blush, is really looking at relationships because it's in the quarter of duality, right? Purpose fulfilled through relationships and bonding, right? So she's really looking at, you know, these patterns of how you relate to people, you know. Here's the patterns, right? And this is like, how do we all get along, right? How do we all get along? And very sensitive and insensitive person, right? Can be very considerate, you know, can also sometimes be incredibly harsh and insensitive, you know, when things don't turn out the way she thinks they will, right? Could abandon all caution and, you know, lose all social graces. So again, I'm going to take a pause. Thoughts, comments? What's one thing do you think that's driving this person in terms of what she's looking for in a partner? If she, what's a story that's going to come up about what she wants to get out of it? Um, Jonah said, it can be hard having the manifestor channel split off from sacral. Yeah, absolutely. What in the answer about what is she looking for? Intimacy and maturity. Pocket says safety and self-worth. I would say predominantly safety and self-worth. I think that intimacy will be satisfying for her, but I think the story, the disembodied, not self story leading her is definitely safety and self-worth. You know, there's different reasons for that. I mean, one, on the surface, the most obvious thing is simply, you know, safety and self-worth, right? At a deeper look, she doesn't have logical circuitry. She has activations, but that doesn't change the fact that she doesn't have logical life force. So we become intrigued with the circuits we don't have, right? Those themes, right? So logic is all about securing the future, right? And, you know, the design Earth, which is more significant than the design Sun, is also very much looking for that. How do I secure my future? Right? So there's a lot of motivation here to be with someone that can really transform her material situation, right? Meet her needs, right? Plenty of food in the house, etc. That will create safety in my life and security, right? Stability, right? And of course, self-worth. I just has to be really mindful of those stories. You know, and she'll be very motivated. I mean, this is someone who wants to, very ambitious, right? Right, very ambitious, and thinks that if she can really give a lot to her partner, she'll get the affection, you know, and love that she needs, that she's looking for. You know, again, so many expectations to mine in these open centers that are driving this whole abstract process rather than the abstract process being driven by energy, right? Energy subsequent of emotional clarity and comfort being reached, right? Yeah, Jonah has a good comment there to read in the chat. Okay. Any final questions or thoughts before we look at something else together? We've got time to maybe just pull up one more chart depending on the scope of the question. And by the way, one more thing to say, again, with this chart being so relational, right, is we're talking quad right here, you know? And so the wrong network, right, and the wrong relationships and intimacies entered into are going to pull out aspects of her that she doesn't like, right? Pulls out the gunk rather than the gold, right? And obviously, you know, in all of these different relationship attempts, there's a hell of a lot of conflict that she's encountering and here to become wise about. You know, how do I handle conflict, you know, gracefully? Okay, so Sirach has a question here. We can do this. I'm going to have you just read me the info, Sirach, so I can just close that. So 1 second. Okay. What is it?
Just funny.
What's the info?
Oh, right. 22nd of September. 2000. And 10:55 p.m.
What is that? 22
ILH.
country?
Yeah. Oh, actually, wait, yeah. Brazil. ILH. Third one. Third one. No, same shit.
Does that look right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, this is a vessel of love. Wow. Okay. Well, I don't remember off the top of my head, and Jonah could speak to this because he has gate 46 as his personality son. But one of the configurations of Vessel of Love is looking to heal through love. Right. So I don't know if that's pertinent here. Yeah, it's a great question, Nangshi. I'd have to give more thought to that. I think it's a different means toward there's various crosses that have to do with healing, and actually mine is one of them as well. One of the commonalities in crosses that have a healing crisis is having gate 52 and gate 58, right, in the incarnation cross. So that's service, it's demands, it's cross of healing. Yeah, so there's different charts that have that going on. So Sirach, do you have a particular question? Do you want to set a little bit of a context here about, do you want to share anything at all, or?
Okay, so one of the things that has been a consistent.
Can you talk into the class? Yeah. Here, I'm going to mute me and you can, or.
Yeah. One of the things. Oh. Right.
You got to turn that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So one of the things that has been a theme that's come across a lot in our relationship is that I don't care enough, or that I don't love her enough. Is it just too quiet?
Yeah.
Okay, one of the things that I've noticed or that has come up a lot in the relationship is that she thinks I don't care enough and that I don't
Love enough?
yeah, that I don't love enough. Yeah. And I don't have it's not that I don't care. So the way that I care is very logical and collective. And I don't really have the same awareness around caring in other ways, like tribally or yeah, it's just it doesn't feel very natural to me. But it's not that I don't care, but she doesn't think I care.
Okay.
So I'm just curious as to what.
Well, this is becoming like a relationship kind of analysis thing. What are questions about her? So
Well, yeah, where is her desire for, like, what is fueling the need for that? Like
the incarnation cross.
Mm.
Yeah. It's a cross of love. So everything's about love for her.
Mm.
Right. So these are all love gates. Right. So I don't know the details of this particular one enough to say, but you know, she's going to break the bond if she's not getting the love that she's looking for. Right.
But she doesn't break the bond. That's probably the open spleen or undefined spleen.
She will eventually. Yeah. And what's going to break the bond? What makes a third line break the bond is pride, right? Or shame, right? It's not just happening arbitrarily. It doesn't just happen on a random Monday. They don't break the bond, right? There is an underlying psychological mechanism driving that, right? And so there's a lot of power dynamics in third lines, right? And they can feel ashamed because of the mistakes that they're making, and then they feel like they become a mistake, right? But yeah, that's a very easy question to answer. It's right there in the incarnation cross. And I don't know the specific version of the cross, like off the top of my head, but it's all of the versions of it have something to do with looking for love, you know, maybe not feeling like they're getting the love that they need, the love that they have, etc. Right?
What is it? Is there anything to say about the fact that 10 is connected to 20, but 15, 46, and 25 are all hanging gates?
These flavor this, right? So she has this self-awareness of her behavior in the now, right? Which can be this beautiful flow, this existential kind of quality of just observing how she behaves in the present moment. On the other hand, that self-observation can be hindering. It can be too much self-consciousness, right? And she's noticing that she can be really extreme, right? She's noticing that she can extend love to all things, right? She's noticing that she can be at the right place at the right time, and she can be very determined. This is a very sensual person. There's love of the body, right? She's noticing that people confide in her, right? She may be tripped up by what people say, you know, the things that she hears may make her self-conscious, right? She may get tripped up when she's pulled into someone else's rhythm, right? You know, and there's going to be a dynamic here of really loving the body or not. Is the body a temple? Is she treating it as a temple, or is she abusing it? Right? You know, she could be getting tripped up by trying to prove her worth, by specifically trying to be brave. You know, she's watching herself and she's like, God, I'm being cowardly right now. Like, I need to step it up. I need to really, you know, prove that I've got the guts. You know, I need to prove that, you know, despite all the fear that I'm feeling, I can persevere. Right? Right? So that's just looking at this particular element.
So what would the needs be for this?
And I want to say one more thing. I mean, with the 10-20, you know, this can become a really it can become a big display of power when she feels unsafe. Right? All of a sudden, you know, she's puffing up her chest and raising her voice, and, you know, there's this kind of back off kind of energy, you know? Yeah. What was your next question?
What would the needs be for this configuration for this person?
That's a very broad question. What do you mean by the
Like
needs?
in the last chart that you were seeing, because the collective channels, there's a need for new experiences, but there's also there was the 1949. So
Well, she's seeking perfection, right? She's seeking, you know, there's a love that she's seeking, right? And logic is always looking to improve endlessly, right? I mean, she wants to feel safe in love, right? There's definitely a need for, you know, there's various love gates happening here, you know. Can she experiment with her fantasies in the context of the relationship? Right? I mean, this is, you know, to be frank, I mean, this is like, you have space for however she needs to explore her fantasies. Right? She has to be careful. Actually, now that I see that this is in Neptune, she's got to be careful about that, because these are Neptunian fantasies. So, and this isn't a love gate. This person has, frankly, illusions about love. Right? So, seeing this particular configuration, being preoccupied with fantasies, you know, fantasies which are definitely going to be about love, and it's already a love themed based chart, you know, she's got ungrounded notions, you know, ungrounded notions about how to find love, right? Maybe what love even is. You know, there's going to be a trial and error journey around that as a third line. You know, this is significant because this is a love gate and this is a love themed incarnation cross. You know, and she can be preoccupied with her needs, you know. I mean, this is not a tribal person. And so being supportive and being supported, and what do I need to give to people to get to meet my needs? How do we be fair? All of that eludes her. It's stressful. She might be thinking about it. She might be interested in those topics, but it's not natural for her, you know? So, you know, that's a stressor for her around. And sometimes she's actually going to say, I don't need anyone. You know, this chart can definitely break the bond and say, I don't need anyone. You know, become the separatist. Better to be alone. You know, what I think love is all about isn't really panning out for me. This is a really big thing. You know, this is linked to the 1 and the 4. Right? I would read the line text here. I don't know it off the top of my head, but that would be insightful for you. But there's a lot of delusions and fantasies and ungrounded notions about how to find love, you know, and it's intermixed with, you know, fantasies. Thoughts, questions? See what's going on in the chat.
I was reading the thing.
That's something else.
Okay.
Yep, very determined design. You know, determined to find love. This is someone who would do well to have space, consciously have some space in the relationship, right? Because third lines are here to sustain, right? The only way they sustain is if they have healthy breaks, right? And it's in those gaps, it's in those, you know, breaks that they gain self-awareness. You know, they gain awareness about the situation. You know, they might need to put down a field of study and come back around. They have a little break from the relationship in the sense of they go and travel with their friends, you know, for a week and come back. Like, these are really healthy things, right? It facilitates awareness, right?
Is it important for that break to be their choice?
Maybe, maybe not. I mean, it's difficult to say. I mean, I know some third lines who travel a lot for business. Are they traveling a lot because it's their choice? Not necessarily, but it seems to help their marriage. Yeah, third tone action needs breaks too. You know, and the breaks with that third tone action sense there is like a cognitive break. They're people that you're talking to and they're with you and they're focused, and all of a sudden then they're not. So 34, 5, and 29, right? So, you know, you probably saw her overcommit, right, to different things in order to prove herself, right? Overcommitting to prove her worth, you know, among other things. Yeah, Jonas said also trying to have habits, gate 5, and failing at them, leading to self-recrimination. If only I could keep the habit up. Yeah. Yep. You know, she thinks she needs to commit a lot of energy to be caring for other people in order to find love. You know, I'm going to I'm going to show my care, you know, by committing to helping them. I feel responsible, right? I feel responsible. I feel like I can really help that person, right? But really what's underneath all of that is she's looking for safety and looking for love, right? And she can really get stuck in things. So one thing you say, she's not breaking the bond. She will. I mean, there will be bonds broken. There are bonds broken, but there's going to be a hanging on, you know, over committing and staying through to the bitter end and putting herself at great risk, possibly at times in doing so. Right. Gate 34, Jonas says, feeling powerless, preoccupation with personal power. Good point. Color 2, transference, taking responsibility where they shouldn't, undefined spleen, not letting go. Yeah, it's a really dangerous combination that a 2 or a 5 here with a motivation and an undefined spleen, that's a strong motivation to hang on, you know, with a lot of stories that justify it. You know, either side of that binary that you're on, it leads to that predicament. Either these ungrounded, hopeful possibilities about, well, you know, yeah, it's not a great relationship, but I think there's hope for this person. You know, I see potential, you know, Or maybe I need to get involved. Maybe I need to give them some feedback. Maybe I could teach them. Maybe I could help them out. I mean, it sounds so like humane and dignified, right? To like think that someone has potential. But in the case of this chart, that's one of the, psychological traps. That's one of the stories that will lead her astray, get her stuck in unhealthy situations, where she's over caring and over committed and just can't get out of the damn situation, because on some level, it feels a little bit safer to be in the wrong situation than to be on her own, where she's not sure, if she can love herself on her own. Not sure if she's safe on her own. And then that goes back and forth with this dynamic of, screw it, better to be alone. So Jonah said, Ross said design side dormant gates in undefined centers are the places of greatest discomfort. Gate 49 here would be very uncomfortable. Yeah, and that's another thing. There's a lot of things that could make this person stuck. There's a lot of things that make this person let go. There's a real strong, in other words, this person has really unhealthy commitments and unhealthy sustainments and unhealthy breaks. Like there's a lot of learning around how she comes in and out of things and how long she stays with things, right? Because just to kind of break that down a little bit more, this is holding on, right? This is holding on. This is holding on, right? This is holding on, right? This could even be construed as a hold on too, but I think for the most part, this is a let go, because this is going to transfer to the separation, right? So we've got all those holding ons, and then this is a let go. This is a really big let go. These third lines are a let go, right? So it's not about figuring out, is she more of this or more of that? No, she's learning all of that. She's going to have things that she sticks with that really aren't good for her and she can't let go. And she's going to have things that maybe are good for her that she lets go of when she's ashamed or her ego is wounded, right? And I'm saying ego wounding just from the third line too. It's that power dynamic, right? But ego is wounded. And then also, particularly when she's emotionally overwhelmed and then just hacks people out of her life insensitively. All of this will happen at some point or another in her journey, right? So it's maturity and wisdom around, is it really over, right? Or not? And if it is over, how do I bow out gracefully? I'm just catching up on what Jonah put here. Yeah, again, what he said about the 49 is, why do I end up having to reject people, end up having to be the bad guy, Yes, more comfortable, he says, to hold on to things than to let go and not wanting to have to play the bad guy and reject people. The very first thing she has to deal with is what it is to be a generator and only do what she responds to, no matter how banal, how menial. The 952 can respond to some detailed, seemingly minor things. So getting pulled away from the menial tasks that the 952 actually responds to. I think one of the biggest things, I'll just say it again, for her to grok, I don't know if you'll pass any of this on, is just it's consciousness around entering and exiting. Should I still be in this experience? Is it still actually correct for me? Is this actually healthy? Is this really aligned? She needs to check in with her body about that, right? She can really be determined, as Jonah was saying, really wants to stick through, focusing on how to provide the best care. You know, it's all about staying or letting go, staying or letting go. Any other comments or questions? I mean, this is going to happen in a very blind way too. There's going to be a denial here. You know, you weren't sensitive to me, you know. I don't like the way that you're behaving. Right. And then second lines already want to point the finger. And then, you know, in the context of gate 49, it's going to be a pretty, potentially a pretty harsh and sensitive, pretty insensitive rejection. Okay. Maybe this is a good stopping place for today. Thanks, Jonah. You're welcome, Pockets. You're welcome, Nangshi. Okay. Well, thank you all. And I'll see you next Monday.